world number 2 Rory McIlroy just missed out on getting his first win of 2017 Sunday in South Africa. This par putt on the 3rd hole in sudden death, sliding by, handing Graham Storm the title. McIlroy said over the weekend that he tweaked his back before the start of the round. The second round, rather, nearly withdrew, but he played through the pain and had extensive tests done today. Those tests revealed a stress fracture of the rib, which has forced him to withdraw from this week's Abu Dhabi HSBC Championship. The 4-time major winner will now begin rehab and won't return to golf until he is fully recovered. Much more right now on Golf Central.
Golf Central, brought to you by Titleist.
Thanks for joining us on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Welcome to Golf Central. I'm Lisa Cornwell. Some unfortunate news for Rory McIlroy just as he kicked off his 2017 campaign. McIlroy released this statement earlier today regarding his withdrawal from this week's stop on the European Tour. It's bitterly disappointing to have to withdraw from the Abu Dhabi HSBC Championship. I think everyone knows how much I love playing this tournament, which is one of the best on the European Tour. To be forced to miss this week through injury is really quite annoying, to be perfectly honest, but I'm sure the tournament will be a huge success, and I hope everyone involved has a great week. In situations like this, you simply have to listen to the experts, and the team I have consulted have all advised me to rest until my rib has fully recovered. For more insight into Rory's injury, we welcome in our chief medical expert, Dr. Ara Sapaya. Dr. Ara, always nice to have you with us. Look, first of all, let's just start by explaining exactly the nature of this. What is a stress fracture of the rib?
Stress fracture, Lisa, is a hairline fracture. Unlike the traditional fractures where the bone ends are apart, oftentimes these bone ends are still very closely together, and you won't even see it on a regular X-ray. They show up on CAT scans or MRIs or bone scans, and it's a microscopic fracture of the bone.
So how could a golfer be susceptible to this type of injury?
It is an injury of repetitive use. In particular, in golfers, stress fractures of the ribs are one of the most common form of stress fractures, and it typically affects the ribs number 4 to number 6. On the leading side. So in Rory, I would suspect this is going to be on the left side, on the back. And it occurs because the muscle there, called the serratus anterior muscle, keeps pulling on that part of the bone, and eventually it causes these hairline fractures.
Doc, we know he's about to begin rehab. What kind of rehab will he be going through? What are other treatments possible for him?
The rehab is primarily resting. Unlike other bones where you can put it in a splint and stop them moving, you can't do that with the rib, obviously, because you use it when you breathe. So primarily this will be to control as much activity around that broken bone, specifically avoiding injuries, activities that are going to cause it to become a complete fracture, and then controlling the pain initially. Once the pain subsides, then the second phase of the rehabilitation would be to strengthen the muscles around it, use the muscle correctly. And the most important part of the rehab is not to rush the return, because you don't want to make this a recurrent problem, which it can become.
Well, that's part of my next question, and this is really a two-part question. The first part, just really quickly, how much time are we talking about for this to fully heal, and what are the dangers of coming back too soon?
Typically, a stress fracture will take about 4 weeks minimum to get better, sometimes up to 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how many ribs and where they are broken. And if you come back too quickly, then you run the risk of it refracturing, and then it doesn't heal properly. And with Rory in particular, given the nature of his swing, how fluid it is and how explosive it is, you don't want to have any glitches where the muscles are not firing correctly and impede the swing, you know?
Dr. Ara, always appreciate the time. I'm sure this is something we will be visiting with you about quite often in the next few days and weeks ahead.
You got it.
We have talked about this so much, but it's really appropriate right now given the timing of all this, because Rory McIlroy is only a green jacket away from capturing the career Grand Slam. With Dr. Ara saying it could take up to 8 weeks to fully heal, that's getting awfully close to the Masters as we say hello to Trip Eisenhower, Matt Adams, they're here to give some insight too. We had Dr. Ara, and he's talking about all that. Look, Tripp, you've been through back injuries. This is a little bit different from what you've seen, but really bad timing for Rory. He was on a roll. The putter's getting better, and we've seen him play some really high-caliber golf.
Absolutely. I was so ready for him to have a great 2017. This still doesn't mean that he won't have a great one because, you know, he's going to take the time to get this right. But Jeff Shackelford's been reporting that it's actually because of how much balls he was hitting over, how many balls he was hitting, excuse me, over the holiday, trying to find the right set of clubs. Remember, the equipment changed for these players, and that's probably an unusual step for him, doing a lot of full swing testing and not spending a lot of time on the short game. So that's probably the main reason why this is a repetitive injury, and that's what Dr. Ara was saying. The good news is it is something that can be fixed. The hard thing for Rory, and I can attest to this with a back injury, is taking the time off and not doing anything. You can't do a lot of gym work. You can't do those things. So that's going to be the tough thing for Rory, is the downtime.
I thought it was interesting in Rory's statement that he said that he is going to listen to the experts and how critically important that is, because how many times have we seen athletes who get injured and they come back too soon, as you were just alluding to, Tripp. The fact that Rory McIlroy missed the Open Championship at St. Andrews in 2015, remember, with the severe ankle strain just before that major, kind of robbed him, certainly, but also robbed us as fans of the sport of having the opportunity to watch him compete in that major. The timing of this injury now relative to the start of the Masters is the risk here. Will he be ready to go? As you were just talking about, not only are we talking about him healing up and finding some form before the first major of the season, and as Lisa talked about, maybe a career Grand Slam, but we're also talking about him adjusting to new equipment along the way. Yes, the trial run this past weekend worked out pretty well, but right now, unfortunately for him and unfortunately for fans of the sport, the timing is very bad.
Matt, what about the trend that we're seeing? I mean, Jason Day's had a back injury. Justin Rose, of course, we all know about the injuries that Tiger Woods has suffered the last several years. Is this a cause of concern with the modern day golf swing?
It could be. I ended up canvassing a number of different people in that regard today. I spoke to Paul Azinger, Sean Foley, Hank Haney, David Ledbetter, even the great Gary Player, to weigh in on what they think about all this. So I thought what we do is take a look at it historically and bring it from back in the day to today, and to take a look at it in terms of what the golf swing is doing to the body. So I want to start out with this. This is some classic video of the great Jack Nicklaus. Watch him in here, Tripp. As you can see, the way his hips are moving laterally, that's what Sean Foley was talking to me about today, and that caused issues of its own.
Yeah, and the good news for Jack, though, is the hip replacement happened after his playing career was over. So he didn't fight a lot of injuries in his career, so this was a repetitive injury for sure, but Jack Nicklaus suffered with the hip.
Here we see Curtis Strange, and you can see with Curtis Strange, unlike the modern swing of today, that the movement in his head off the ball through the golf swing. What's interesting, though, with Curtis Strange, and this speaks to that fact that you just brought up, Tripp, along with Jack Nicklaus, Tom Watson, Hal Sutton, Craig Stadler, they all had hip replacements. Here we see, of course, Tiger Woods.
There's the back injury, and of course he's had several back surgeries, and let's hope he's had his last one.
He wasn't the first to have back injuries, but Paul Azinger once told me that I haven't seen a golfer get hurt in the course. These injuries are happening in the gym. There's Jason Day from the match play. Hank Haney noting to me earlier today, he said, quote, all these back guys are big workout guys, so that correlation warrants looking into. In fact, interestingly enough, in the different opinions on this from those surveyed, as we look at Rory, David Ledbetter said it's important to be in the gym to prehab the body for the strains of the modern golf swing. And I asked Gary Player what he thinks about the modern swing. Is it causing the injuries that we're seeing today? Directly to the heart of the question that you asked me, Lisa. And the World Golf Hall of Famer Gary Player, a 9-time major champion, answered by saying, no, Matt, I do not think so. They just need to get fitter. So it's interesting that even amongst all of these that are at the top tier of the game, coaching the game or one who's in the Hall of Fame, there still isn't universal agreement as to whether it is impacting the body.
Well, I was just going to say and ask you this, because as a player, and I don't know how things have changed as far as the gym's concerned, but Gary Player's comments to me are really interesting because he's a big workout guy, but I don't think he's in there doing the squats and all these big heavy lifts. You think, is that what he's referring to?
Well, yeah, it's hard to say, can Rory McIlroy or Jason Day or even Tiger Woods get fitter? I mean, it's hard to say, but I think what it boils down to is it's a lot of different things that are causing these players to have some time on the sidelines, in particular with the back. And Michael Breed and I were talking about it earlier today, and he made a good point that today the game is all about distance. Everything is about speed and clubhead speed, so you maximize everything, and it all centers around, for the right-handed player, a right hip being very explosive through the ball, and that puts a lot of strain above and below the areas of that right hip. The other thing, too, is these players are playing young. They're starting younger. They're playing golf solely. They're not playing other sports, and they're spending a lot more time year-round on it. They're also swinging very, very hard right from the get-go over the course of the years. Then you throw in building the muscle around to get stronger and hit it further, and probably not enough balance of right side, left side, and you get too dominant on one side, and that's clearly going to happen and break these players down. The one thing I think we're probably going to start seeing now with all this chase for distance and power is we're probably going to see shorter, more explosive careers. I think some players, I mean, Tiger Woods has spent over 500 days in his career on the sidelines. Imagine if he was still competitive with all those times and he didn't have to spend on the sidelines. A player like Jack Nicklaus or Tom Watson, they didn't have to spend that kind of time. But I do think that's the trend, is going to be shorter, more explosive careers, because these players are going to get injured a lot chasing distance.
Perhaps, Lisa, the balance to all this was a great story that David Ledbetter told me today about John Daly the first time he met Ely Callaway. Ely said, "We got to get you into the gym," and John Daly said, "No, you know what? You can pull a muscle, but you can't pull fat."
Good point.
I like that. I just sit in a steam room. Isn't that working out?
That's working out.
I feel like it.
Yeah.
Another player who is also focused on achieving the career Grand Slam this year is 46-year-old Phil Mickelson. He's hopeful to return to the PGA Tour this week in La Quinta, California. Golf Channel insider Tim Rosafort, who, by the way, does hot yoga, maybe that's another thing to do, spoke to Mickelson and learned that Phil won't know his status until Tuesday or Wednesday, saying it will be a last-minute decision. Lefty played 2 rounds in early December after his first hernia surgery when he developed another hernia. He played his first round of golf since then on Saturday, exactly 1 month after his second surgery. He has been a busy man. This week would be a good time for Lefty to make a return if possible. Mickelson is one of 6 players the last 30 years to have 4 top 5 showings in the Career Builder Challenge. He's won this tournament twice. So Phil Mickelson, a little bit of a different issue, but like a hernia is no small issue, especially as it pertains to the golf swing.
Yeah, it does. And this is the thing of Phil. I still think there's plenty left in the tank for Phil Mickelson. In his mid to late 40s, I still think he's got plenty of firepower left, provided that he can avoid these kind of nagging injuries. And obviously, when you've had to go under the knife a couple of times, it is serious. But one thing about Phil, you look at his last couple of years, yes, he hasn't won since he won the Claret Jug, but he's come agonizingly close in major championships. He's just run up against a wall of Henrik Stenson last year, one of the most epic Sunday rounds we've ever seen at the Open. And the other great round, it was against Sergio in the singles at the Ryder Cup. Fantastic play. I think Phil's going to win many more times on the PGA Tour. Hopefully, he's contending in a couple of more majors, and he fills that hole in his resume, the U.S. Open, because he's got 3 of the 4 career Grand Slam legs. I
realize it's a broader question now, but we have to bring up the fact that golf is packed with so many big events. Can you remember a January where we came into a calendar year with so many of the big players dealing with physical issues that we're talking about?
No, I can't. No, not in recent history.
You know, Rex Hoggard was talking about in his article on golfchannel.com that as tournament ambassador, that Phil is hopeful to play this week. And, you know, I feel for the tournament, I feel for the fans, and I'm hoping that he's able to, because he is golfing royalty. He is, in our parochial golfing world, he is a celebrity. He harkens back to the days of the King, Arnold Palmer, being there, and Hollywood royalty like Bob Hope. So now we're left with hope that comes Thursday he'll be able to tee it up.
All right. Well, coming up, Justin Thomas went low this weekend while several others flirted with 60 and below. Can you believe that? We gave you a chance to voice your opinion on Twitter. Are all these low scores good for the game of golf? We debate that and show you the results later on Golf Central.
Golf Central. is brought to you by Titleist, the #1 ball at the Sony Open in Hawaii. Shipsticks, the largest golf bag shipping company in the world, simplifying the way you travel.